Welcome to Rethink Community Podcast, brought to you by Think Tank, Inc. I'm your host, John White. For the last 10 years, Think Tank has been helping people and organizations step into the stories of those who face poverty every day. We believe that stories have the power to break through our opinions and positions and bring us together. On this podcast, we bring you real stories from real people who have grappled with poverty, faced obstacles, blazed new trails, and forged unlikely relationships. On today's episode, I welcome Andrea Carter, who shares her powerful story with us. Andrea's experience may challenge your ideas of what it looks like to be an addict or an ex-offender, or whether it's even possible to recover. Andrea's vulnerability and courage are moving and humbling. I think you'll find yourself hanging on to every word of her story. I'd like to welcome Andrea Carter with us. Andrea is currently working at Think Tank staff as AmeriCorps Vista coordinator and is also a COPE certified facilitator, and a really good one.
Thanks.
Andrea. And you have a story to tell about the intersection of addiction, poverty, reentry, recovery, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And relationships.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about your story.
Where to start? So I think it's important to say that I graduated early from high school at 16 and completed college by the age of 20 and actually started teaching at the age of 20. It's important to say that I made it all the way through college without drinking or doing any drugs. And I know that's a typical party time for a lot of people, but I was really driven in my academics and actually in my, I was working out daily and really driven about my my workouts. So I was, addiction probably took off somewhere in that line about rigorous eating and rigorous workouts and that sort of thing, but it was all positive stuff. Mm-hmm. Then, as I started teaching at age 20, I had, under my first year of teaching is when I first started to experience some addictive behaviors with alcohol. It was right about the time when my father died when I was 20, and the first breakup of the love of my life, the man I thought I was going to marry, and the stress of just being an adult on my own and not being able to deal with those emotional things. I resorted to going out with my friends to the bars for the first time, and alcohol and the conditions that were going on in my life was like a perfect combination for a perfect storm. And so I realized that I started to repeat some of the behaviors that my father had because he was an alcoholic growing up. And so things started to go south. I had about 10 good years of teaching before I resorted to using cocaine. And I think that came along with going to bars on the weekends and being around people that were in that lifestyle, that I tried it the first time, and it was like magic for me. And as a result of that, I lost everything. It started with powder cocaine and then went to crack cocaine, and I lost my teaching career. I lost my house, my car, my children. There were 2 kids involved in that time. In that 10-year period of my life, I lost custody of them, and it was like one of the darkest moments of my life. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Can't get these headphones on right. But it was the darkest period of my life, losing everything and being stuck in active addiction like that. Coming along with crack addiction is usually crime. And I became a convicted felon during that time period as well for child endangering charges that I had with my children. Once I left my daughter alone when she was 6 years old in the middle of the night to go buy crack. And the second child endangering charge was with my second daughter when she was just a baby, driving while intoxicated with her in the car. So a lot of decisions that were made in my active addiction that I wouldn't make, as a clear-minded individual, and there was a lot of guilt and shame associated with that. I met my husband in active addiction, and it's surprising to say I met him buying crack on the street corner. But the reason why I fell in love with him is because he was different than most people in the streets that were out to steal and get what they can get and take advantage of you and harm you. I remember the first thing that stuck out to me is that he shared his beer with me, and nobody shares anything in active addiction. He asked me if I wanted his last beer. And so I was like, there's something different about this guy. And he continued to protect me on the streets from having to deal with drug dealers or people trying to hurt me or take advantage of me. He took care of me. And we were both in our active addiction at the bitter ends of our active addiction at the same time. And I remember we used to hold each other at night and talk about the days when we would get clean. And we would envision times where I would have my children and he would be speaking at a 12-step meeting, sharing his story, that we would do homework together, have dinners together. And that's what the future started to hold, is that I went to jail, went to prison, and he went to treatment. And during that period of time, he used to walk from Springfield to Dayton to visit me. And he wrote.
How far
that was about a 35-minute trip by car. So he walked there and hitchhiked there to see me every other Saturday because neither one of us had transportation.
Wow.
Yeah. So he really loved me, and I loved him. And he wrote me. I still have all the love letters that he wrote me when I was locked up. I have a whole tote full of letters. And so something we're going to pass on to our kids one day, because love letters are priceless. But anyway, he was from generational poverty. Mm-hmm. And I didn't come from a background of a lot of poverty. Middle-class family growing up. All my brothers and sisters went to college. I was the first to go to college. So mine was more situational poverty as a result of the active addiction and losing everything. I was thrust into situational poverty, going from making $36.50 an hour to $7.25, doing surveys for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, outbound surveys, the kind you get at night during dinner time and they hang up on you.
Sure. Yeah,
that was my job. So it was very humbling. So there were some differences about how we managed money and how we took care of money together between Mike and I as we in our relationship. Tax returns, I wanted to budget throughout the whole entire year. And when he got a tax return, he was ready to spend it all. So that was just one difference. Getting credit cards that he would want to get and rack them up and never make a payment, where I was very worried about credit. Not to say that my credit wasn't severely damaged in active addiction, but I was working hard to rebuild it after I got out of prison and was working. So there was just some differences between the way we were raised when it came to poverty and finances and work and that sort of thing. So we knew we loved each other and we had a lot of common ground, but there was some things we needed to work through there when it was coming from our backgrounds with poverty and how we deal with finances. And we still struggle with that today, 10 years later.
Right.
But, so today I've had a lot of key players in my life during the past 10 years of recovery that have really poured into me to help me feel from the beginnings like a professional again and get back into the career field and not just a job. I love what I do today with AmeriCorps Vista. I served as an AmeriCorps Vista for 2 years. Before that, I went back to school to get a master's in rehabilitation counseling, and I actually was a counselor for 5 years for individuals with drug and alcohol problems, specifically those that were addicted to opiates and on medication-assisted treatment. So I did that for about 5 years, and then I did Vista. And out of Vista came a career for me today at Think Tank, where I was actually hired because of these things like experience with addiction, being a returning citizen, my life in poverty. Those were assets for me instead of liabilities that help me do my job today. So I love to do the cost of poverty simulation, especially the reentry version. That's my baby. I love doing that. And I love helping Heather manage the Vista project that we have at Think Tank as well. I really like coaching the Vistas and helping them along the way with their professional goals and helping them through their Vista service. So that's a little bit about me. I know it's a mouthful.
That's great. That's wonderful. Let me, thinking about, we Think Tank has advanced these five essential practices,
right?
And which is really universal practices of how to treat each other, how to, does one of those practices stand out to you as others, you interacted with others that were rooting for you in those dark moments or those tender moments or vulnerable moments? Does one stand out to you? Yes.
I have experience with all of them, but I'll just share about a couple that have really stood out in my journey. New in recovery at about 3 years clean, I was introduced to a community organization called Circles. And the principle that stands out for me with dealing with Circles was developing leadership within and building social capital. So this was an organization where individuals that were in poverty and middle-class individuals came together, building radical relationships where the family, which was Michael and I and my kids, decided to work on ourselves and get out of poverty. And we were matched with individuals that were very different than us, called allies. And this really expanded our social capital because this is where I was introduced to Heather Cunningham, who is my boss today. And I was matched with Amy Willman, which is a wonderful spiritual mentor that I had at the time. And my husband's mentor was Michael White from the Springfield Arts Council. So we were doing things like going to the symphony, which we've never done before, and Michael had never had any experience with that, and getting involved in a church community, which helped us spiritually grow as well. And I was asked to lead meetings in Circles, which helped me build on my leadership skills again and help me feel like a more productive member of society. So I did a lot of things.
Well, let me tell you, you were a leader when you were 20 and 21 and in front of a classroom. And you're saying that by being 3 years clean and you being involved in Circles and that you being exposed to leadership opportunities, you had to kind of reinvent yourself as far as your leadership.
Most definitely. Active addiction destroys everything in you, especially your self-esteem, your dignity, and your belief in yourself. So I had to learn how to do all kinds of things new, like how to love again, how to do social graces even, how to work again. And my leadership skills were really dampened by active addiction. So when somebody believed in me, it started to reawaken those things and put a fuel to my fire to help me exceed and grow professionally.
So some folks were pouring into your life and yet you felt a level of shame, but they were pouring into you, and your shame went from shame to dignity, or rediscovering your human dignity.
Most
and what did that do for your whole well-being?
It lightened my load, definitely. It made my world brighter. It just opened up possibilities for me that I thought were never going to come again. I thought I was going to die an addict. So when I first got clean, it was really rough. It's one of the hardest things that people have to do. That I say the normal person who's, if this would happen, if their whole life was destroyed down to ground zero and had to rebuild it from the ground up, they'd be in the mental institution for the rest of their life. It takes a special kind of person, and addicts are very resilient individuals to be able to do that. And so, but it took people pouring into me, like you say, and it took allies in my life and people that cared about me and poured into me to be able to do those things.
And cared about you and your future, not your past.
Right.
And the judgment that comes along with that. Mm-hmm. So that's a great story.
Yeah.
But I think you still need to have people, just like we all do, pouring into your life every single day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now how are you now with your? You mentioned that you're now using your past as assets.
Yeah.
For others. Tell me what you're doing about that. That's kind of, it's using your pain that you've had in your past for the greater good of others in your community.
Definitely. It started with, in my 12-step meetings, sponsoring women that were new in recovery. I was able to help walk them through the darkest moments of their life, first getting clean. I say one day clean is a miracle. So really helping them along the way in their own recovery journey. And my pain has a purpose when I'm sharing with them to help them feel like they're not alone and that you can do it and you can get through it. That's one way. Through the cost of poverty simulation, when I am helping to awaken individuals that may not have a lot of experience with poverty or are working with families in poverty, but maybe not have firsthand experience, sharing my story about that and everything that comes along with that helps break stigma, first of all, because I'm standing up there as a professional today. And they may not know my history, but when I share that I'm a returning citizen and put the felon sticker on, you get some looks. And so it breaks stigma associated with poverty and returning citizens. And it helps for me to expand on the debrief when they're sharing their experience with it and put personal stories of life along with the COPE experience. So that's another way that my pain and my past serves a good purpose today. And so those are just a few things.
And you're a spiritual person. You've been going to church.
Yeah.
And your husband and do you see your social capital increasing week by week, daily, month by month, and how important that is to have friends that you not only they're pouring into you, but you pouring into them and building those bonds?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I can thank my husband for helping me so much grow spiritually. He's been a spiritually grounded person for a lot of years. And he's taught my kids to pray. We pray together as a family. And it's helped me on my own spiritual journey. So we have a lot of people pouring into us in the church community. And many doors have opened up social capital wise with working at Think Tank with all the COPE facilitators, Vistas, people in the community, doing webinars and podcasts like this. Definitely opens up a lot of opportunities for new people in my life.
Now, with your experience, we have a principle called, doing with others as opposed to doing for or to. Mm-hmm. And so your experience, how do we begin to help people that are in a rut or that are kind of marginalized from society or is struggling with certainly addiction? But what is it about the how can we that perhaps aren't experiencing those things how can we affect positively and pour into others that perhaps some things that we're not used to doing?
You can't take anything for granted because, like I said earlier, most of the individuals that are dealing with the kind of things that I'm talking about in my own life, they're building themselves up from the ground up. So we have to take baby steps, and we have to walk alongside them, helping them with transportation, showing them how to fill out forms, showing them how to properly do an interview, showing an individual how to write a resume, helping them grow spiritually. Just every facet of their life needs to be modeled, and lots of encouragement, helping them dive into their gifts and find out what they're good at, what their goals are, what their passion is, and just help awaken their spirit so that they have the chance to grow.
You mean awaken their spirits. And does that mean just the incremental, tiny little victories, tiny little miracles that build confidence?
Yes.
That has been stripped away. So that's a great principle. What about your moment by moment peace? How do you maintain your peace?
How do I maintain my peace, as in my peace of mind?
Peace of mind, peace on a daily basis, spiritual peace, resting, making sure that you're on the right track every day.
Yeah. I forgot to share earlier that there was a mental health component with me as well in my early 20s with bipolar disorder. So that leads from that to say this, is that taking my medications as prescribed is so important to keep me mentally stable, which gives me a fighting chance. Making sure I do something for my recovery every day, a meditation, prayer, so that I can keep my addiction in check. And doing something that I like is important. And also, some of the things that Michael and I used to cry about at night when we were holding each other are priceless gifts today, like having my children in my life and sitting down together as a family and doing dinner and homework together and those sort of things, and family time. Just enjoying that and remembering how important it is to me. And I have to try to keep stress at as minimal as possible. That's not always easy when you have a 4-year-old and a 20-year-old and a 14-year-old in the household. But trying to keep stress down as much as I can as well.
I forgot to ask you also, as we wind down, that you had actually, your husband was a major part of your recovery, and didn't you have a story about your probation officer?
Yeah.
How he was instrumental, and so what was so key? How he treated you that was important while you were in this real desperate situation.
After I got out of incarceration, I was on probation for a remainder of like 3 months, I think. And I had Stephen Henry as a probation officer here at Clark County, and he had a reputation of being kind of scary and a hard nose. So I had some expectations going in that this wasn't going to be a pleasant experience, but he really surprised me. He looked at my background and said, you have something that we really need, Andrea. I see here that you used to be a school teacher, and kind of vetted an idea of starting a GED course for the felons on his docket that did not have a high school diploma or a GED. And so he believed in me to find the curriculum, to find a location, to set it up, and start meeting with these felons to help them get their GED. And so that was so impactful in me to be able to teach again, because with the felony child endangering charges I had, I never thought I was going to be able to teach anywhere again, especially not children. So this was an avenue for me to do what I was good at, and definitely helped me feel like a professional again. And so he didn't tell me, go out there and get any kind of job just to say you have a job. He gave me an opportunity to do that. So
That's great.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he's just, I need your help, Andrea. I see some potential in you.
Yeah.
I see that you have assets, just not deficits.
Right.
And how our culture is so fixated on what's wrong with the other person.
Right.
As opposed to seeing the way hopefully Jesus sees that person as something special, someone sacred, someone has gifts, has a purpose, has meaning in their life.
Yeah.
And can and just finding that magic within the soul. And so that's very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Any other last thoughts as you how are you pouring back to your children?
Well, I'm teaching Rosa how to read, and so I do my teaching with my little ones at home, and definitely helping them believe in God and develop a relationship with God, not just something that you go to church. We want to try to instill in them that this is where you go when you have problems, or when you need reassurance, or you need love, or you need guidance, or you're worried about something. This is who you pray to, and this is you develop a relationship, because if that's what got me clean part of the time, is developing that relationship with God. That in my 20s, I thought I was God, because I said, set a goal and work hard towards it, and you could do it. But little did I know that I needed much more experience and guidance with God. But that's one way that we pour into our kids, and just showing them unconditional love, and being there with them, and doing family time and that sort of thing.
I know that, and we're going to end here, but you do the course, The Cost of Poverty Experience, especially, and we do the reentry version. And it's always amazing when you do that. You simulate the 60 minutes of being in prison and coming out of prison, and then we have a debrief. And no one knows your background up at that point as you're facilitating.
Right.
And at the end, last 15 minutes or so, you disclose that you are a returning citizen, and you disclose a little bit about your life. Isn't it amazing, the reaction?
Yeah.
And what does that say about our community?
Yeah.
They want to see, they're blown away by that. They want to see, we hunger to see victories in people's lives, and second chances and third chances, and those are special graces.
Yeah.
Those are special copes.
Yeah.
I want to thank you today for another session of another great session for our podcast.
Thanks,
Andrea.
John.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
This has been the Rethink Community Podcast, brought to you by Think Tank, Inc., with music by Elijah Hamilton. Don't forget to subscribe to hear upcoming episodes featuring the stories of other courageous individuals we think you should know. And if you're part of an organization that would like to be better equipped to serve people in poverty, be sure to check out the resources we offer, including the Cost of Poverty Experience, or COPE, at thinktank-inc.org/COPE. Join the hundreds of businesses, schools, colleges, churches, and healthcare providers that have used the Cost of Poverty Experience, along with our other suite of tools and coaching to find new ways of thinking and responding to poverty.